I'll bind your soul to mine, and eternity will know your name. The Vampire King did not raise his voice when he said it. He didn't need to. His lips hovered just above the soft place where her pulse once lived, his breath cold against her throat, his hands steady on her waist as the court watched in terrified silence. The girl who had once been given away like a debt payment stood tall before him, eyes glowing like silvered fire. "Say my name again," she whispered. He did. And the night itself seemed to kneel. Before we reached that moment, before the vow that would shatter curses and rewrite eternity, their story begins somewhere far less grand. With a frightened girl. A cruel bargain. And a king who had forgotten how to feel. You're watching dark romance for feral hearts and stubborn souls who love dangerous love stories. Before we dive in deeper, tap subscribe, turn on notifications, and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from and what lesson you think might be hiding in this story. Is a curse always a curse, or can it become something else? Now, let the tale unfold. Lyra moved silently through the manor the way smoke slides through cracks, seen, but never heard. Her bare feet glided over cold stone, her pale dress brushing her ankles with each hesitant step. Platinum white hair fell down her back like spilled moonlight, catching the glow of the candles as she passed. Her eyes, a sharp, icy blue, always seemed to be listening to a world she could no longer hear. Servants saw her and looked away. They crossed themselves. Whispered. Vanished into side doors and stairwells. They didn't know she could see the way their mouths formed the same word over and over again. Curse. Lyra paused at the end of the corridor and pressed her palm against the wall, feeling the vibration of the house beneath her skin. The manor was large, ancient, and colder than the wind outside. Tonight it felt emptier than ever. Her 16th birthday. No candles. No music. No laughter. No one had said the words. No one ever did. She swallowed, throat tightening, and turned toward the servants' entrance. If the house had forgotten her, the forest never did. The night air bit into her skin as she slipped out through the side door. The world outside was all shadow and breath, trees stretching like skeletal fingers, branches creaking faintly in the wind. She couldn't hear them, but she felt the movement. She always had. Lyra ran. Wet grass kissed her ankles, mud clung to her feet, and the cold tore at her lungs. Her white hair streamed behind her like a streak of light across the dark lawn. Beyond the iron gates, the forest waited, wild, dangerous, alive. The only place she ever felt free. She reached the tree line and didn't slow down, weaving between trunks, skirts snagging on roots and branches. The ground was damp and soft, the air full of scents she'd memorized as a child, wet earth, moss, the metallic tang of distant rain. Lyra. She felt the shout before she turned. Her mother's voice, she couldn't hear it, but she knew the shape of it by the way her mother's lips moved, the way her body carried sound through the air. Lady Eleanor's cloak fluttered as she ran after her, dark hair escaping its braid, eyes wide with fear and something else, sorrow. Lyra stopped, chest heaving, breath fogging the air. Her mother reached her and grabbed her arm gently. "It's dangerous out here," Eleanor said, speaking clearly so Lyra could read her lips. "You know that." Lyra shook her head hard, tears blurring her vision. "I can't stay inside," she said, voice breaking though she couldn't hear it. "Not tonight. Not when they all pretend I was never born." Eleanor's face pinched, pain flickering there. Lyra, she began. You know how your father. A movement in the trees. A shape. A shadow. Lyra's body went still. Her mother didn't notice. Not yet. The darkness shifted. Eyes gleamed, feral, gold, catching the moonlight. Wolves. 1. Then 3. Then more, emerging from the trees like they'd been carved out of the night itself. Eleanor's head snapped toward them. Lyra saw her mother's lips form one word. A word she had seen many times but never heard since the forest stole her hearing years ago. Run. A wolf lunged. Teeth flashed. Claws raked. The world became fragments. Lyra stumbled backward, her own scream a silent tear in the air. Her mother pushed her away with both hands, cloak flaring as she turned to face the pack. The first wolf hit her full force. Lyra saw blood. Saw teeth. Saw her mother's body twist, fall. And then, all at once, the world swallowed itself. The last sound Lyra would ever remember hearing, a distant echo of her own childhood, vanished into nothing. Silence. Total. Crushing. Eternal. Her mother's mouth opened in a scream Lyra could no longer hear. The wolves tore and ripped and snarled in a world that had gone soundless. Lyra crawled across the ground, hands shaking, mud under her nails, reaching. Blood soaked into the earth. Her mother's eyes, once so warm, stared past her toward the moon, glassy and still. Lyra's fingers trembled over Eleanor's cheek. Her lips formed a single word that no longer existed for her. Mama. Her chest heaved. She screamed again, a sound only her own bones could feel. Then she turned and ran. Branches clawed at her skin. Roots tried to pull her down. The earth itself seemed to want to swallow her grief. She did not stop until the manor rose ahead of her, a black shape against the storm-heavy sky. She burst through the front doors, rain and tears blurring everything into a smear of light and shadow. Lord Renard stood in the hall, a single candle burning beside him. The flicker carved harsh lines into his face, hollowing his eyes, sharpening his jaw. What happened? He demanded, lips ablade. Where is your mother? Lyra staggered forward, chest painfully tight. She raised her hands, shaking, smeared with red, and pointed back toward the forest. Wolves. Mother. Gone. Her lips formed the words. Her body tried to carry them. The sound could not reach her own ears. Renard stared at her, confusion tightening his features, then something uglier slid in beneath it. Realization. No. Blame. You, he breathed, stepping closer. You brought this upon her. Lyra's head snapped back as if struck. She shook it hard, tears spilling hot and helpless. No. Please. Listen. He didn't. His voice rose, clipped, furious, writing a sound she could no longer access. But she had learned to read his mouth. His anger. His hatred. Do you remember the night you were 3? He hissed. You ran into that forest. You said you saw spirits, ghosts. We followed you. We nearly died in those woods because of you. He turned away, pacing, fingers digging into his own palms. He saved us, Renard spat. A stranger out of nowhere. Dragged us from the jaws of death. But he asked for a price. A blood debt. A life owed in exchange for the lives he spared. He spun back, eyes fever bright. You were never meant to leave this castle again, Lyra. And now your mother is dead, because of you. Each word landed like a blow she couldn't hear, only felt, in the way his mouth twisted around her name. In the way he couldn't quite look at her. Lyra's legs gave out. She dropped to her knees, palms hitting the cold marble. The debt remains, he whispered. Then louder, so the walls, the ghosts, the universe could hear. And you will pay it. She shook her head, mouthing please, please, but he stepped back like she was something diseased. You are the curse of this house, he said. And tonight, the curse will be collected. The candles went out. All at once. A wind swept through the hall, cold and deliberate, though the doors were closed. Shadows stretched, grew, thickened like they'd finally found their king. The great doors groaned inward. A figure stepped in from the storm. He was tall enough to make the doorway seem smaller, cloaked in black that drank the light. Rain glistened on his shoulders. The air shifted when he crossed the threshold, as if the house itself recognized him. In his arms, he carried a body. Lyra's lungs locked. Her mother. He laid Eleanor gently on the floor, far more gently than Renard had ever handled anything fragile in his life. Then he straightened. When he spoke, Lyra didn't need hearing to feel the weight of his voice. I saved your wife, the stranger said, his lips moving with lazy precision. And your daughter. I warned you what breaking a vow would cost. He lifted his head. The hood fell back. Eyes, not human, gleamed beneath the stormlight. Not gold like the wolves. Not blue like Lyra's. Crimson. Deep and impossible. And now, he said softly, I've come to collect. Renard staggered backward, going pale. You, he whispered. It's been years. You should be dead, the man asked, the hint of a smile touching his lips. You know better. Lightning sliced across the sky behind him, illuminating his face. Skin like polished marble. Features so sharply cut they were almost cruel. No trace of age, no sign of softness. Only stillness. Old. Terribly old. The stranger bowed his head the barest fraction. I am King Darius Vaylor, he said quietly. Sovereign of the bloodbound. Lord of the dead. Renard's knees hit the floor. Lyra, still frozen where she'd fallen, watched the scene like a painting come alive. Her father trembled, hands shaking as he pressed his forehead to the marble. Please, Renard begged. Take her. Take the girl. She's the reason my wife is gone. She owes you her life. Let her be in debt. Lyra's breath hitched. He didn't even hesitate. He was willing to hand her over to a creature whose eyes glowed like old wounds. To call her a curse and gift her away. Darius didn't look at Renard at first. He looked at her. A soaked, shivering girl in a torn dress. White hair slicked to her face. Blood on her hands. Eyes that should have held terror but didn't. Only grief. And beneath it, something else. Quiet defiance. He stepped forward, boots soundless on the stone that vibrated under Lyra's palms. You offer her to me out of fear, he murmured, studying Renard. But that is not what she feels. His gaze cut back to Lyra. For a moment, the hall held only their shared stillness. Something moved in his eyes, too faint to name. Recognition? Curiosity? Hunger? Then he nodded once. "The debt will be paid," he said. "She comes with me." He extended a gloved hand toward Lyra. Renard bowed his head deeper. "Take her," he whispered. "Take the curse from this house." Darius's expression cooled, like he'd expected nothing more. Lyra stared at his outstretched hand. He was a monster. A king of monsters. A creature out of stories meant to scare children away from windows. But the house behind her held nothing. No love. No safety. No future. She looked one last time at her mother's still face. Then she placed her shaking hand in his. His touch was winter. Cold enough to steal breath. Yet beneath that cold, there was something else, a burn that moved up her arm, under her skin, like embers waking up. He turned without another word, drawing her toward the open doors. Outside, a black carriage waited, carved with silver sigils that seemed to pulse faintly in the rain. Two dark horses pawed at the ground, their eyes faintly red in the night. Lyra glanced back. Renard knelt in the doorway, shoulders hunched, head bowed, not in grief, but in terror. She felt nothing for him. No pity. No rage. Just the same silence that had swallowed her since the forest. Darius helped her into the carriage, movements smooth and almost careful. The door closed with a soft thud. The world outside became rain and shadow and vanishing light. Inside, the carriage smelled of leather, smoke, and something metallic. Lyra sat rigid, hands locked around the silver locket at her throat, her mother's. Her only anchor to a world that had just abandoned her. Darius watched her from across the small space, crimson gaze unreadable. "Do not fear me, little mortal," he said at last, speaking slowly enough for her to catch the shape of each word. "I did not come to kill you." Lyra swallowed. Her fingers trembled as she moved them, signing carefully in the small space between them. "Then why?" Darius's eyes dipped to her hands. He understood. "Interesting." "Because," he said softly, "your silence hides something my kind has forgotten." His gaze moved to the locket at her throat. "Something dangerous." The carriage jolted forward. Wheels bit into the wet earth, carrying them away from everything Lyra had ever known, her mother's body, her father's cowardice, the house that had never once celebrated her existence. She didn't look back. Behind her, the manor disappeared into the storm. Ahead, unseen, the kingdom of the dead began to whisper a name it had never spoken before. Lyra. Hours, or years, it felt the same. Later, she felt the carriage slow. The fog outside glowed faintly red. Lyra pressed her hand to the window, feeling the vibration of hooves and stone. Through the mist, a fortress emerged, towering black spires piercing the clouds, their tips crowned with strange, unmoving flames. The carriage came to a stop. Even before the door opened, she knew he was there. Darius appeared in the frame, hand extended once more. His clothes were dry now, impossibly so, and the air around him tasted like iron and cold. She hesitated only a heartbeat before placing her fingers in his palm. Cold. Fire. The same impossible contradiction. When she stepped down, the ground beneath her feet felt different, older, heavier, like everything buried here remembered every drop of blood that had ever been spilled. The gates closed behind them with a slow, echoing finality she could feel in her bones. Her fate, sealed. They walked through long halls lined with candles whose flames did not flicker. No draft stirred them. No smoke curled upward. Each flame burned steady, unnaturally. Faces were carved into the stone walls. At first, Lyra thought they were statues. Then she realized their expressions seemed to shift when she wasn't looking directly at them. Every step she took sent a soft vibration up her legs, a reminder of her own small weight in a place built for things that never slept. Darius moved beside her with the fluid grace of a predator that no longer needed to hunt to prove what it was. Lyra studied him from the corner of her eye. His profile was ageless. His stride was measured and precise. Not one movement was wasted. His presence filled the hall without noise. At last, they stopped. Before them rose a vast chamber. At its center stood a throne carved from black stone veined with silver. Above it, a tall window of blood-red glass threw a crimson glow across the floor. Darius turned to her. "This will be your home now," he said, voice low. Her hands shook as she signed, wary, slow. "Am I your prisoner?" His lips curved, not into a full smile, but into something like it. Warmer. Sadder. "You are my payment," he answered. "But I do not cage what belongs to itself." The words didn't make sense. But the way he said them did. For a heartbeat, her fear loosened its grip. Not gone. Just, distracted by the flicker in his eyes. By the way he'd carried her mother with more care than her own father. Shadows stirred at the edge of the room. They were not alone. Two figures stepped forward from the alcoves, one woman, one man. The woman was all sharp lines and winter colors, skin pale as frost, hair like spun silver, eyes the color of knives. The man beside her looked carved from stone, quiet, formal, unmoving. Both bowed their heads to Darius. Their gazes, however, slid to Lyra and lingered there, tasting. "My king," the woman said, voice cool, lips forming each word with careful precision. "You bring a mortal into the heart of our halls." Darius didn't answer immediately. He just watched Lyra. A small, barefoot girl with moonlit hair, standing in a circle of crimson light and refusing to bow. "She is the debt owed to me," he said after a long moment. A promise long forgotten, now fulfilled. The woman's eyes narrowed. A debt? Darius's gaze flicked upward, as if watching memories play across the high ceiling. "Years ago, I saved a man and his child from the forest," he said. "He swore me payment in blood." Lyra's breath faltered. A man. A child. A storm. A pale stranger kneeling before a terrified 3-year-old, whispering words she'd never been able to recall fully. "Don't be afraid, little one. Not while I'm here." Her fingers closed around her mother's locket. She looked up at him, heart pounding, and their eyes met, not king to mortal, not monster to sacrifice. Something else. Recognition. Faint. Dangerous. The woman, this courtier with the knife-silver eyes, said nothing more. But Lyra felt the hostility sharpen in the air, pressing against her skin. It didn't matter. The moment she stepped into the room that would become her chamber, every other feeling vanished. The space was too large. Too quiet. The bed was draped in dark velvet. The window soared so high she felt like she might fall into the sky if she went too near it. Everything gleamed with a cold, silvery sheen under the moonlight. Lyra sank into a chair and stared at her reflection in the mirror. Her own face looked like a stranger's, hollow eyes, wild hair, dried blood at the corner of her jaw. She lifted her fingers to the faint scar beneath her ear, the thin, pale mark left by the night the forest took her hearing. Her world had gone silent then. And yet tonight, in this monster's castle, something new hummed under her skin, just out of reach. Warmth. A sudden, sharp pain shot across her neck, so quick it made her gasp. She grabbed at the locket, fingers digging into the metal. The ache flared, then retreated like a tide. Far below, in the throne room, a crystal goblet slipped from King Darius Valar's hand and shattered against the steps. Red liquid, wine or blood, it hardly mattered, spread across the stone. His eyes flared crimson, brighter than they had in centuries. His jaw tightened. He closed his eyes. When he spoke, there was no one there to hear him. "What have you done, little mortal?" Lyra sat at the window later, knees drawn to her chest, chin resting on them. Moonlight draped itself over her bare feet. The castle grounds below were a sea of shadows and pale stone. Her eyes burned from crying. Her throat ached with all the words she could not speak to anyone who would listen. She didn't hear the door open. She felt it. The air shifted, growing heavier and colder in a way she was already beginning to recognize. She didn't need to turn to know it was him. Darius stepped into the moonlight, face carved in tired stone, hair dark as midnight, eyes still edged with a glow that shouldn't have belonged to anything dead. "You shouldn't look at the moon so long," he said quietly. She turned her head, studying his lips. "Why?" she sighed. "It reminds mortals of what they've lost." Her hands moved again, slower this time. "Maybe that's why you stare at it, too." The silence that followed was different. Not empty. Weighted. Something in his gaze shifted. A crack in the ice. He took a step closer. "Do not tempt me, little one," he murmured. "You have no idea what I become when I forget what I am." Her heart kicked against her ribs. She didn't move. The air between them hummed, not with fear, not exactly, but with the sense that some line had been drawn in that room years ago, and they were both dangerously close to crossing it. Outside your screen, you're just watching a story. Inside this world, a deaf girl has just been traded to a king who can feel her heartbeat in a hall filled with the dead. If you're still with me, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens when their bond begins to awaken, and tell me in the comments. Is Lyra's father evil, or just weak? And what would you call her right now, a curse, or the beginning of something else? Because in the rest of the story, hunger will become a lesson. And a single bite will change not just her fate, but his. "Every beat of your heart calls to me." He said it like a confession. Like a man who had spent centuries swallowing his own hunger. And Lyra, fragile, deaf, newly orphaned, had no idea that the Vampire King had never said those words to anyone. Not even the woman who cursed him. This is where their story stops being fate, and becomes dangerous. Before we continue, my Lily Enchanted Tales viewers, hit subscribe so you never miss our dark romances, and drop a comment telling us. Are you watching from your bed, your couch, or the bus? And what lesson do you think this story is whispering about, love, power, or destiny? Now breathe in. Because tonight's scene begins in the quiet before the storm. Lyra didn't sleep after Darius left her chamber. How could she? The castle walls hummed faintly beneath her feet, like they recognized her. Like they were watching her. And there was something else, something she didn't understand, burning quietly under her skin. She sat in bed, fingers wrapped around her mother's locket, eyes fixed on the moon. Her breath fogged the air with each exhale. Outside, the wind pushed against the glass, but the sound could not reach her. She didn't hear the castle sigh. But she felt it. And far below, in the throne room carved from obsidian and old blood, Darius stood alone, jaw clenched, crimson gaze unfocused, fingers pressed against the place where his own pulse should have been. The place where he swore he felt hers. The next night, she woke to a soft vibration in the walls. A presence. A shadow. And then the door opened. Darius stepped inside with the silent confidence of someone who had never needed permission in his entire immortal life. Candlelight kissed the edges of him, catching on silver threads woven through his dark hair. Lyra sat upright, heart pounding. He studied her, his expression unreadable. "You haven't slept," he said, forming each word clearly. She shook her head. His eyes softened, not enough to betray weakness, but enough to remind her that he was not carved from stone alone. Something darker lived beneath. Something dangerously close to feeling. Darius stepped closer, slowly, giving her time to flinch or retreat. She didn't. Her hands moved in deliberate gestures. "I can't sleep when the castle is alive." He tilted his head. "You feel it." She swallowed and nodded. That small admission made something flare in his eyes. Not surprising. Recognition. He reached her bed. Lyra had never been this close to him in the quiet. In the moonlight, he looked different, less king, less predator, and somehow more dangerous. He sat at the edge of the bed, close enough that she could feel the cold radiating from him. "Your world is made of silence," he murmured. "You read what others miss. You sense what others never notice. You feel what the living drown out." She lifted her chin. "Your world is death." "Yes," he said softly. "But you hear things in my silence too." That admission, simple, quiet, made her chest tighten. She glanced away, fingers trembling around the locket. But he reached out slowly, as if touching a frightened animal. His fingertips brushed a stray strand of her white hair behind her ear. Cold. Burning. Alive. Her breath caught. He withdrew his hand immediately, jaw clenched, as though the simple touch had cost him something. "Lyra," he said quietly, "you do not understand the danger you are in." She signed faster now. "Then explain it. Stop talking in riddles." Darius's jaw tightened. He rose abruptly, pacing to the window as though the night itself was easier to face than her. "Centuries ago," he began, "I was not alone." Lyra's heart stills. A past. A woman. A story buried under stone. "She was the first to love me," he said. "Or so I thought." He turned back to Lyra, eyes dark, crimson catching dim light. "When I refused to turn her, when I refused to give her eternity, she cursed me. A curse born not of power, but of heartbreak." Lyra's stomach twisted. She said if I ever loved again, or if anyone dared love me, they would burn for it. Her fingers loosened from the locket. Burn. Like wolves tearing through her mother. Like the pain in her neck hours earlier. Like something waking inside her. So I made a vow, he whispered. I would never love. Never feel. Never risk another life. He took a slow breath. And yet. A word like a match in the dark. You, he whispered. You unravel everything. Lyra stood slowly, breath trembling. She stepped toward him, not out of bravery or recklessness, but because something inside her knew she had been walking toward him long before she knew his name. She raised her hand and touched his chest. Cold. Still. Unmoving. But beneath it, so faint she almost thought she imagined it. A tremor. A pulse. Her eyes widened. His breath hitched. He grabbed her wrist, not harshly, but like a drowning man catching rope. Do not. She didn't pull away. She signed with her free hand, slowly, fearlessly. You feel something. His fingers tightened around her wrist. I feel everything. And then, too fast for her eyes to follow, she stumbled. Her knees weakened. Her vision blurred. Darius caught her before she fell. His arms wrapped around her waist, cold and strong, and the world tilted. Lyra pressed her palm against his chest again. There. A pulse. Impossible. Alive. He shuddered, jaw tightening, eyes darkening with something far hungrier than bloodlust. I cannot lose control, he whispered. Her breath brushed his throat. Control is already gone, she signed. Their bond, thin as a thread, fragile as a flame, pulled taut in that moment. Something ancient stirred. Something forbidden. He lowered his head, forehead touching hers. You tempt me, he breathed. Her lips parted. Then take what you want. He froze. His fingers curled at her waist. His breath trembled. But hunger, real hunger, overcame restraint. His lips grazed her neck. Not biting. Not yet. Just tasting her skin, the warmth, the pulse, the life he was never meant to touch. Her heartbeat thundered. He felt it. Every beat. Every tremor. Every desire. Lyra, he whispered, voice breaking. And then. His fangs slid gently against her skin. A brush. A warning. A question. She tilted her head slightly. A wordless answer. He bit. Pain flared, bright, sharp, electric. Not agony. Awakening. Her breath hitched, fingers gripping his coat, pulse shuddering under his lips. Darius stiffened. Every muscle locked. His eyes shot open, glowing silver at the edges. Her blood touched his tongue. And the world split open. He pulled away violently, stumbling backward as if her blood had burned him. Lyra swayed, touching her neck where the twin marks throbbed. Warmth spread through her. Heat. Power. Sound. A faint vibration, like the whisper of candle flames, shivered through her silence. Her eyes widened. Darius stared at her with something between horror and awe. What did you do to me? He rasped. But Lyra wasn't looking at him. She was looking at the air. The flicker of fire. The soft hum against her skin. She raised trembling fingers to her ear. A tear slid down her cheek. I can hear, she whispered. Darius went still. Completely, utterly still. Lyra pressed her hand to her chest, feeling the new pulse under her ribs. Then she lifted her gaze to him. I can hear your heartbeat. His mask shattered. He looked undone, raw, exposed in a way no king of the dead should ever look. Her blood had woken something in him. And his bite had woken something in her. A bond neither curse nor fate had prepared them for. The next morning, Lyra found herself standing outside his chambers without remembering walking there. Darius stood by the window, robe open just enough to reveal pale skin and shadows carved by centuries of scarless battles. He was bathed in gray morning light that dared not touch him. He turned slowly. The look on his face made her breath catch. You shouldn't be here, he said quietly. Then why do I feel your voice in my mind? She asked. His expression sharpened. You feel more than that. She swallowed. I saw a woman, she whispered. In my dreams. Dark hair. Fire. She said your name before she burned. Darius's jaw clenched. You saw her? I didn't mean to, Lyra said. It was like your memories were speaking to me. He turned his face away. Silence warred between them. She was the one who cursed me, he said at last. My first sin. My first love. The one who wanted eternity more than she wanted me. Lyra's chest tightened. Then why do you look at me like that? He met her gaze. And this time, no lies, no walls, no coldness. Truth. Because you break the curse. Lyra froze. Darius stepped closer, voice barely a whisper. I didn't speak that aloud. Her eyes widened. Because she'd heard it. Inside her mind. Their bond tightened. Electric. Alive. Unmistakable. I hear you, she thought. And he heard her back. Not everyone rejoiced. The court watched them with suspicion that quickly turned to fear. Rumors spread like rot. Her blood is changing him. He's becoming too human. The girl is a threat. When Darius entered the throne hall with Lyra at his side, the room fell silent. Every step she took felt like stepping into the mouth of wolves. Lord Veridon, old as stone and twice as cold, bowed stiffly. Your Majesty, he said, lips twisting. Is it true? The mortal you took as payment is no longer mortal? Darius's voice was calm. Too calm. And what if she is not? Veridon hesitated. Then she poses a danger to our laws. Lyra's mind brushed against Darius's. Fear. Anger. A fierce, territorial protectiveness she had never felt from anyone. She whispered through their bond. You're protecting me from them. But who protects you from yourself? His head snapped toward her. For one heartbeat, centuries of restraint cracked. The entire hall felt it. The king's bond answering hers. That night, he found her in the moonlit courtyard. She didn't run. She didn't tremble. She simply looked at him, not the king, not the monster, but the man who had broken his own vow the moment her blood touched his. I feel what you feel, she said softly. Even when you try to hide it. He stepped closer. Tell me, Lyra, he murmured, what is it you feel right now? She placed her hand over his unbeating heart. Everything you're afraid of. His breath caught. Her silver blue eyes held his crimson ones. And for the first time in his immortal life, he let himself feel. Outside your screen, this is a story. Inside this world, a cursed king has just felt a heartbeat that shouldn't exist. If you're still here, Lily Enchanted Tales viewers, hit subscribe, and tell me. Is there Bond destiny? Or a disaster waiting to happen? If I cannot have you, then no one will. This was the first warning. Spoken not by Lyra, not by Darius, but by the woman whose curse had shaped them both. Tonight, she will try to make it true. Before the blood spills and the vows are broken, tap subscribe if you love dark romance, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and the lesson you're pulling from Lyra's journey so far. Because this story is not just about love. It's about what love destroys, and what rises from its ashes. Now, into the darkness. The castle had changed. Not physically, its ancient spires, shadowed halls, and unblinking statues remained untouched, but something in the air shifted the moment Lyra's blood touched the king's lips. The dead felt it. The walls felt it. And deep beneath the floors, in chambers where secrets had been chained for centuries, the curse itself felt it. Lyra and Darius had crossed a line that was never meant to be crossed. And fate does not forgive easily. Lyra wandered through the upper gallery long after the moon had risen. Her fingers brushed the stone wall, feeling the cool vibration of the castle humming faintly under her skin. It no longer frightened her. It recognized her. In a strange way, she recognized it too. Her senses had sharpened since the bite. Her vision, clearer. Her body, stronger. The air itself carried faint sounds she'd never heard before, whispers of stone shifting, the tremble of a candle flame, the heartbeat of faraway creatures in the forest below. She heard none of these with her ears. She felt them with something else, something awakened. Something alive. She paused at a tall window, breathing in the night air through the cracked glass. Her once silent world now thrummed with a low symphony she could not explain. The Bond. Darius. The thought of him tugged at her chest, warm and cold at once. Where is he? She wondered, fingers brushing her locket. And as though answering her, the fire in her veins pulsed. A thread pulled taut, tugging her attention toward the west wing. He was there. He was calling without speaking. She followed. Darius stood in the quiet of the ancient library, a place older than most kingdoms, lit only by moonlight bleeding through cracked glass. Scrolls lay discarded around him. Books, bound in old leather and older magic, were scattered across a long marble table. He looked less like a king and more like a man trapped between decisions that threatened to tear him apart. Lyra stepped inside. He didn't turn, but she felt when he sensed her presence. His shoulders stiffened. His breath, usually controlled, hitched faintly. "What are you searching for?" Lyra asked, voice soft but steady. He finally looked at her. Crimson eyes. Sharp jaw. An expression torn between desire and dread. "The curse," he said. Lyra's pulse quickened. "The one that kills anyone who loves you." His gaze dropped to her neck, to the healing mark he'd left. And she felt his guilt crash through their bond like a storm. "Yes," he whispered. "That curse." Lyra stepped closer. "Then why look for answers now?" His chest rose with a breath he didn't need. "Because your blood changed everything. Her breath caught. He moved toward her, slow, deliberate, as if fighting something inside himself with each step. You should not have survived my bite, he said, voice low. You should have burned like she did. Lyra stiffened. She repeated quietly. The woman from his memories. The one who cursed him. The one who burned. The one whose jealous love turned into a spell meant to bind him to misery. What was her name? Lyra asked. Darius hesitated. Then said it. Marivelle. The name tasted like ashes in the air. She was beautiful, he continued. Powerful. Hungry for eternity. When I refused her, she sought immortality through darker means. And she blamed you, Lyra murmured, reading his lips. She cursed me, Darius said. Not just my body. Not just my heart. My future. Every mortal who dared to love me would suffer. Lyra lifted her chin. And yet I didn't burn. Darius stepped close enough that his breath brushed her cheek. That is what frightens me, he murmured. Lyra pressed her palm against his chest. A slow, steady pulse throbbed beneath her skin. You're afraid because you care, she whispered. You broke your vow. I did, he admitted, voice rough. And it may cost you everything. Lyra smiled faintly, painfully. You saved me from death. If loving you destroys me, then I choose the fire. Darius's eyes darkened, torn between wanting and resisting. You do not understand what you are saying. Then teach me, she whispered. And this time, he didn't stop himself. His hand slid behind her neck. His other arm wrapped around her waist. He lowered his forehead to hers, breath shaking, not from weakness, but from surrender. You are forbidden to me, he said. But I am no longer strong enough to deny you. Lyra's lips parted. Then don't. Their bond pulsed. Alive. Dangerous. Inevitable. And then. The doors slammed open. Lady Seraphine entered. Tall. Regal. Eyes cruel as broken mirrors. Her gown was black velvet stitched with threads that glittered like fresh spilled blood. She didn't bow. She didn't smile. She looked at Lyra, not with hatred. With hunger. Not for love. For power. My king, she said, voice smooth as poisoned silk. How fortunate you are to have company so fragile. Darius stiffened. Lyra felt the cold fury rise in him like a tide. What do you want, Seraphine? He asked, each word a low growl. To protect you, she said sweetly. From the girl who is unraveling centuries of your restraint. Lyra stepped forward, fire rising in her veins. I'm not the threat, she said. Seraphine's eyes glimmered. Poor mortal. Every threat believes that. Her gaze slid down Lyra's throat. To think he wasted his first bite on you. Darius moved in front of Lyra instantly, shadows curling around his body like living armor. You will not touch her, he said. Seraphine laughed. You think I want your little mortal pet? No. I want what she threatens. What is she threatening? Lyra repeated. Seraphine's lips curled. The curse. Lyra froze. Darius inhaled sharply. Seraphine turned her gaze to him. You feel it, don't you? The binding is weakening. Your heart stirs. Your pulse returns. Because of her. Lyra's breath caught. She touched her chest subconsciously. Her heart. His heart. Bonded. Alive. She is undoing the spell, Seraphine whispered. And when it breaks fully, what do you think happens to me? The truth hit Lyra like a blow. Seraphine had tied her immortality to the curse. If it broke, she would fall. Seraphine's smile sharpened. Exactly. She lifted her hand. Magic shimmered. Dark. Old. Hungry. Before Darius could move, Seraphine flicked her wrist. Lyra flew backward, slammed into the stone pillar, breath knocked from her lungs. Lyra! Darius roared. He lunged. Seraphine cast again. A blast of black fire struck him, sending him skidding across the floor. Lyra forced herself up, vision spinning. Seraphine stood in the center of the library now, her eyes glowing with a sickly light. You cannot break my curse, she hissed. And you will not take what is mine. She summoned a chalice of dark red liquid. A poison spell. A binding spell. A death spell. Lyra knew it instinctively. Seraphine's gaze sharpened. You want eternity, little mortal, she whispered. Then drink it. Or he dies tonight. Lyra's throat tightened. Darius staggered to his feet. No, he rasped. Lyra, don't. Seraphine's magic wrapped around his throat. He choked. Lyra screamed. Seraphine extended the chalice toward her. A life for a life, she cooed. Drink, and the bond breaks. Lyra's blood turned to ice. Break the bond. Lose him. Or drink, and die. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the chalice. She lifted it to her lips. Darius roared. Lyra, stop. She drank. Agony exploded through her. Fire ripped through her veins. Her lungs seized. Her vision shattered. She collapsed to her knees, clawing at her chest as the poison tore through her blood. Darius broke free of Seraphine's spell with a roar that shook the castle. No, he choked, catching Lyra before she hit the ground fully. Lyra, no. Her eyes fluttered open. She reached for his cheek, barely breathing. You saved me once, she whispered weakly. Let me save you now. Her body convulsed. The fire inside her surged. Darius grabbed her wrist. No, he snarled, teeth bared. Then let her curse end with me. And before Seraphine could stop him, he bit her. Not in hunger. In desperation. In love. In defiance of fate. His blood flooded into her. Her blood into him. Their bond ignited. White hot. Explosive. Breaking. Reforging. Seraphine screamed. The spell cracked. The castle trembled. The curse shattered like glass. Lyra's body arched, glowing with silver-red fire. And when her eyes snapped open, they burned with new power. Immortal. Eternal. Unbound. Seraphine staggered back, horror carving itself into her perfect face. No, she breathed. No, this cannot. Cracks split across her skin. Light poured from them. She was breaking. Unraveling. Consumed by the curse she forged. Darius stood behind Lyra, his hands steady on her shoulders, his eyes cold and merciless. "You tied your life to my suffering," he said quietly. "And now that suffering ends." Seraphine's scream tore through the hall. Then vanished into ash. Lyra collapsed against Darius, exhausted, trembling, her body still burning with new strength. He caught her, pulling her against his chest, breath shaking with the weight of everything they'd survived. He pressed his forehead to hers. "You are mine," he whispered, voice raw. "Not by curse. Not by debt." Lyra closed her eyes. "And you are mine," she whispered. "By choice." Their bond pulsed. Not poison. Not fate. Something older. Something freer. Something stronger than death. When they returned to the throne hall, the court gasped. Lyra's eyes glowed like dawn fire. Her hair shimmered silver white. Her skin radiated a soft, dangerous light. She was no mortal. No curse-bound victim. No payment for a long-forgotten debt. She was the fire that broke a dynasty. And the queen who rose from ashes. One by one, the court bowed. Even the elders. Even the shadows. Even the walls seemed to tremble in reverence. Lyra stepped forward. "My life was once called a curse," she said, voice resonant. "But curses are only chains for those too afraid to break them." She lifted her chin. "I broke mine." Her father stumbled into the hall then, eyes wide, face pale. He fell to his knees, shaking. "Lyra, my child, please, forgive." She looked at him, not with cruelty. With power. "You feared me," she said. "Now fear what I became despite you." She turned away. Darius offered his hand. Lyra took it. Their hearts pulsed in perfect synchronicity. The castle bowed around them. And together, they walked into eternity. Unbroken. Unbound. Unstoppable. If Lyra's journey moved you, my lily-enchanted listeners. If her fire burned something awake inside you. Subscribe for more stories like this, and comment below. What did Lyra teach you about power, destiny, and love that refuses to die? Until our next tale. Stay wild. Stay curious. And let your passions run untamed.